Dr. Pedro had seen his fair share of strange discoveries, but nothing could have prepared him for what lay deep in the heart of the Amazon. His team of archaeologists and biologists ventured into the rainforest in search of lost civilizations. They had heard lots of stories from the locals about strange sightings in a particular section of the Amazon forest, and several tales about unexplained phenomena. Dr. Pedro didn't really believe these stories, but the possibility of being the first to make new discoveries was irresistible. He and his team had taken a helicopter to fly them to the specific location they planned to explore. It was deep in the Amazon jungle, and they had been flying for a long time now. There was nothing out of the ordinary, just endless sea of huge rubber trees, Takuma palms, and Brazil nut trees. However, the deeper they traveled, the more they felt like they weren't alone. The expedition had been uneventful all along, until Dr. Pedro caught a glimpse of something that defied reason. Hidden beneath thick layers of trees, vines, and moss, looking down from the helicopter, he could vaguely see what appeared to be a gargantuan reptilian creature, estimated to be over 100 feet in length. Dr. Pedro noticed it first. He could barely make it out clearly due to the foggy weather. He tried to quickly call the attention of his team, but the helicopter had flown past that location, and the animal seemed to have slithered away out of view. He frantically explained what he saw, but his team found it hard to believe. They flew a couple of minutes and eventually got to their intended destination. They found a safe enough place to land and disembarked and unloaded all their gear and equipment. The helicopter had to leave as the pilot prepared to fire up the engine. He looked back at Dr. Pedro and said with a smile on his face, "Be careful out there, Doctor. You never know what could be creeping in this God-forsaken side of the world. I'll see you in the next 3 days as planned." He chuckled calmly as he lifted the helicopter, and he was on his way back to civilization. Dr. Pedro looked around and observed his surroundings. He could see the ruins of the ancient temple they were to investigate just a few feet away. He signaled to his team to start heading into the temple so they could begin their exploration. As they walked into the temple, the carvings on the walls of the ancient temple depicted massive, nightmarish creatures that had no right existing in any known historical record. He quickly thought back on what he saw earlier, but shook it off. Maybe he was just imagining things. The locals had warned his team about going to this part of the jungle, but he ignored their warnings. The locals even refused to go near it, whispering warnings of A Boca da Terra, the mouth of the earth. Undeterred, Pedro and his team pressed on, unaware that they had already trespassed into a forbidden realm. Inside the temple, the air was thick with an unexplainable humidity, as though they had stepped into another world. Dr. Isabella, the team's paleontologist, examined the engravings closely. These animals, they resemble prehistoric creatures, but they're different. Look at the proportions. These things are bigger than anything we've recorded, she murmured. A sudden tremor shook the ground beneath them. Dust rained from the ceiling, and an ominous groaning noise echoed through the chamber. Then, a portion of the temple floor collapsed, revealing a massive, dark cavern beneath. Dr. Pedro peered into the abyss. A foul, warm wind rushed up from the depths, carrying a scent of decay. "Look at the size of that opening," said Miguel, their guide. His voice wavered with fear. "That's no ordinary cave." The team lowered a high-powered light into the void. What they saw made their stomachs drop. A massive tunnel stretched downward, wider than any natural cave system. Fossils of enormous creatures were embedded in the walls, some resembling ancient dinosaurs, others appearing completely alien. But it was what moved in the darkness that turned their blood to ice. Something was still alive down there, and it was watching them. Ignoring the overwhelming dread, the team rappelled into the depths, driven by scientific curiosity and the promise of a groundbreaking discovery. As their boots hit the cavern floor, they realized just how vast the underground world was. The ceiling stretched high above, covered in glowing fungi that bathed the area in an eerie blue light. The walls were slick with condensation, and the sound of distant water dripped in an unnatural rhythm. Then, the first creature emerged. A colossal reptilian head, nearly the size of a jeep, peered at them from the darkness. Its eyes gleamed a sickly yellow, unblinking. The creature's body followed. It exhaled heavily, its breath hot and putrid. Isabella gasped, stepping backward. This is impossible! The beast hissed loudly, shaking the cavern walls. From the darkness, more figures slithered forward. Massive serpent-like creatures, flightless birds with dagger-like beaks, and something that looked like an oversized scorpion with too many legs. Miguel grabbed Pedro's arm. "We need to leave, now!" But before they could react, the snake-like monster lunged. Chaos erupted. Miguel fired his flare gun, illuminating the cavern in a blood-red glow. The creatures flinched at the light but didn't retreat. The snake struck first, its massive jaws snapping shut just inches from Pedro. Miguel shoved him out of the way, but the creature's tail whipped around, sending Miguel flying into the cave wall with a sickening crunch. Isabella screamed as one of the flightless birds lunged, its beak slicing through the air. She barely dodged, tripping over a rock. The rest of the team scattered, some trying to climb back up the rope, only to be snatched by the serpent-like creatures waiting above. Their screams were cut short as they were dragged into the darkness. Pedro grabbed Isabella's hand. "Run!" They sprinted deeper into the cavern, pursued by the monstrous things that had lived in this underground world for centuries. The deeper they went, the stranger the environment became. The walls pulsed, almost as if they were breathing. The air thickened with heat, and soon they found themselves at the edge of an even greater abyss. A massive chasm stretched before them, its bottom glowing with an eerie red light. Molten rock churned below, casting flickering shadows across the cave walls. And on the other side of the chasm, something stirred. It was a creature unlike the others, a towering, multi-limbed thing with skin as black as the void and eyes that gleamed like molten gold. It moved with an unsettling grace, its presence exuding something beyond primal fear, something ancient and malevolent. Pedro barely had time to process what he was seeing before Isabella grabbed his wrist. "We can't stay here!" Behind them, the pursuing creatures halted, as if fearful of the entity across the chasm. Even they knew to stay away. Pedro and Isabella turned, scrambling toward an alternate tunnel. The walls shook violently, as if the cave itself was alive, angry at their intrusion. Rocks tumbled from above, sealing their only known exit. The two were now trapped in the belly of the earth, with no way back. Days passed, or maybe weeks. There was no way to tell. Pedro and Isabella wandered through the subterranean labyrinth, their torches dimming with each passing moment. Hunger gnawed at them, but the fear of what lurked in the shadows kept them moving. The deeper they traveled, the more they realized the truth. This cave wasn't just a lost world. It was something more, something ancient, perhaps even the true origin of life itself. Then, in the distance, they saw something that froze their blood, a pile of bones, human bones. Some were fresh, their flesh still clinging to them. Others were ancient, covered in a strange mineral crust. Among the remains, they saw modern gear, shredded backpacks, rusted weapons, a tattered journal. Isabella picked up the journal with shaking hands. The last entry read, "We weren't the first, and we won't be the last. The Earth is not what we thought it was. This is its heart, its core, and it is alive." We were never meant to find it. Now we belong to it. A noise echoed through the cave, a deep guttural sound that sent shivers down their spines. Something was coming. Pedro squeezed Isabella's hand, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. There was no way out. They had found the truth, and the truth had found them. The last thing they saw was a pair of glowing eyes emerging from the darkness. Then the earth swallowed them whole. If you enjoy interesting and scary stories like this, show your support by hitting the like button. And if you would like to see more, please subscribe.